Welcome to If I Only Had 10 Minutes. I'm Jane Randall, one of the partners in Comms Collective, and I am thrilled to have with me Katie Hill from the NFL. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Jane. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Katie, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Katie Hill. I'm the Senior Vice President of Communications at the National Football League. I've been here for just about 5 years, or seasons, as we say in the NFL. This is
Yes,
my
yes.
season. And I came to the NFL after a career as a staffer in Democratic politics. So I started out working on Capitol Hill and then kind of had a few jobs here and there, culminating in the Obama White House and then working for President Obama in his post-presidency for 4 years in his family office in Washington, D.C. And I started my career out actually at a nonprofit in Nashville and a communications firm there.
I'm going to start with this one because it's a good one. If you and you've worked for such high-profile people, if you had 10 minutes to prepare a CEO or founder or someone of that nature for a tough interview, and you can decide what the issue is, but just generally, what would you do?
Yeah. Um, I mean, listen, I'll sort of run through the basics, which I think, all comms people know, right? Which is that you align on the 1 to 2 messages that you really want to make sure you're imparting to your audience.
Hmm.
Um, and you sort of really drill those down. So I think of them as your home bases that you come back
Right.
to, sort of no matter where the line of questioning goes. I think the second thing is you want to make sure you leave a little time to anticipate tough questions. But I actually think the most important thing, Jane, is to understand what is it that your principal, and I like to ask this question, what is the topic that you hope doesn't come up? What
Hmm.
is the one thing that you hope doesn't get asked? Because I think that if you can surface that, it actually helps take down any kind of anxiety level, or even just the sort of headspace that the principal and the boss might be
Yeah.
dedicating to that, even subconsciously.
If you could make one hire now for your comms team, what would it be and why?
Yeah, listen, I won't sort of name a specific role
Fine.
or title, but I will tell you the sort of type of person that I'm always looking to hire, which is and the best communicators have, always have some traits in common, right? They read news voraciously, they're great writers, they are strategic thinkers. But I think the one trait that they all have in common is that they're curious people.
Hmm.
And so that is sort of a trait that I am always looking for, sort
Hmm.
of curiosity, right? To understand how are people getting their news and information. Really looking for people who understand this information and media ecosystem that we're existing in right now that's
Hmm.
fragmenting rapidly, where traditional media feeds social media and influencers and vice versa. So it sort of works as an ecosystem.
Right.
And then I would sort of say, another trait secondarily that I look for is somebody who understands, um, who's humble, but who understands that your job is to be part of a team and it's to be helpful. So
Right.
that is sort of a trait that, again, if I could hire right now, it would be a curious person who brings that sensibility.
Do you find, do you feel that's harder to find these days or no?
Oh, interesting. Potentially a little bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, no, no. Listen, I don't know if it's harder to find. I think it is sort of more when the way that we're getting our news and information is it's being served up to us.
Correct.
Even the idea of a feed. So it's like we're being fed at all times. And I think from there, that can sort of take a lot of the curiosity and the serendipity out of I am going out and seeking information.
Right. That was exactly what I was thinking when you were talking, is that, we just, um, everything's just right in front of us. I
Yes.
sort of love and hate that if I have a question about anything, I can just ask and get an answer right away because,
I agree, Jane. I agree. I mean, listen, now I'm going to date myself, but one of the things I loved most when I was a kid was opening the encyclopedia to go look for an entry on something, and it would take me forever to get there because I get lost along the
yep,
way, flipping through the pages. And the same with dictionaries.
yep,
We had sort of spelling assignments where you had to go look up a word and write out a definition, which
yeah,
sounds like archaic now. Well, I would run across all these other amazing words first. And so I do find that because of the algorithm and all the rest. And so I've actually started to think a little bit for myself about ways to try to re-engineer some of that into my life. And, I think actually reading newspapers
hmm,
is a good way to do that. So it's like, I'm going to spend time with the Sunday Times and the Saturday Times where I will inevitably discover articles in
yeah,
sections that if I were simply in the app,
yep,
I might not find.
yep. No, I agree with you. As you probably know, Comms Collective is all about fractional and the idea of fractional hiring. So I do want to ask you, how do you think, or do you think, the rise of fractional work is changing the comms industry?
Yeah, listen, I think first of all, the fact that we're finally seeing the rise of fractional communicators and fractional chief communications officers is such a sign of people seeing the strategic imperative of communications and CEOs understanding that you have got to have a high level communicator at the table
Mm-hmm.
during high stakes, negotiations or, strategic decision making. And then I think for the company, what they get is a really cost effective way to have a brilliant mind at the table who is unencumbered by office politics or
Mm-hmm.
perhaps the day-to-day management of a team, these things that you have to take seriously when you're
Yeah.
in the role full time in house. And then instead you've got somebody who can come in and sort of say, I can come help you through this merger. I
Right.
can help you with this product launch.
Right.
I can help you with this rebrand.
Because you've had these very serious roles. So what is the most ridiculous thing you've ever had to explain as a communicator?
Because this is a G-rated podcast, I probably won't get into some of them, but let me just say that when you work in healthcare communications, especially when things involve sexually transmitted diseases, then you often find yourself, the CDC is working on various publications and some pretty hilarious conversations with reporters where you're like, I cannot believe these words are leaving my mouth. But we won't get into that. I will say that the ones that still tickle me today that I think about are when I was working for President Obama post White House,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of interest in his travel schedule.
Okay.
And he, of course, is a private citizen.
Yeah.
And so, we no longer, there was no longer a press pool that followed him around, sort of no longer the expectation of kind of or full transparency about
Yeah.
his movements. But we had gotten in the habit when he would travel internationally of sending out a brief statement in advance just to sort of give a heads up,
Sure.
like a readout either of where he was going to be or where he had been.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that would end up spawning then was a lot of speculation among reporters from far-flung places. And so I find myself in these conversations with, and I won't name names or sort of identify people, but bureau chiefs of very well-known publications in certain countries who would call and be absolutely insistent because they had it on very good authority that President Obama was coming to their country next week. And then I would have to tell them that's not true. That's simply
Right.
not true. And they would say, well, no, I know you're not telling me the truth, or maybe you've got bad information. And I'm thinking I'm
You got that information?
actually looking at his schedule,
Right.
right? Right. I promise you he's not going to Jamaica next week.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
not happening. Or in fact, I don't think he has plans to go. This is not a thing. Right. And so it was always very funny to sort of try to communicate that. And then a couple times ultimately got to the point where I just said, I think you're going to be disappointed when he does not ever show up.
Who is the best communicator you have experienced? I guess alive or dead. You don't, or experienced or think of alive or dead.
Wow. Well, I know we only have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'll try to keep this short. I mean, and listen, I will go with people with whom I sort of had close contact and got to really learn from, right? The first is, you can't, it's Barack Obama.
Yeah.
No question. Just an extraordinary ability to cut through the noise, to distill complicated topics down into something that made you understand it, but also just to meet people where they were and to make people pay attention. And I think everybody, whether they voted for him or not, sort of felt that. And then I would say at a practitioner level, I think Josh Earnest is, he was the White House press secretary who I worked for, and the last White House press secretary that President Obama had. He's an extraordinary communicator. And watching the care and the thought and the preparation that he put into his daily press briefings and really trying to understand what is going to make a message land.
Right.
Not only for the reporters in the room, but thinking about the end user, the people who are going to be reading about it in the paper or online or seeing it on TV or digesting it on social media. He was so savvy about that. And also just a deeply kind and humble person.
Nice. I like that. Okay, you've made it through. So you've come to the last question. If you had, you travel all over, you have a lot of things on your plate. If you had an extra 10 minutes in the day, what would you do with it?
Yeah, I would meditate for an extra 10 minutes. So I try to meditate each day or as often as I can. I don't always hit my daily goal, but
Hmm.
I would add an extra 10 minutes to my existing 5 to 10 minutes of
Nice.
meditation. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think if I did a tally of the communications people who say that, or something like that, people who just say silence or white space
Yeah.
or meditation. And um, I think there's a lot of us, and I think nobody takes time these days, right, to just be. And I think that it's really important. So
It's necessary. It's the best return on investment for sure.
agreed. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Jane, what a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, promise me you'll come back someday.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.